What's up, Blur Gang? I'm trying to get back into the habit of coming to y'all live. I haven't done one of these in a while, and this is probably going to be a longer form in the podcast. But I do feel like I wanted to get this one out. I wanted to do one a couple weeks ago about the uproar about the dad bringing McDonald's to the family, to the one kid, and talk about the concept of the man providing for all the kids eat, and that's my take on it. I decided to leave that one alone because there's an element of it where it crosses over into being a meme. And I don't want to get into that too much. But I do want to talk about discipline. And I wanted to use this as a format to have a conversation about methods of discipline, specifically with Black parents and the ways that we were raised and some of the stuff that we've seen and some of the stuff I've seen as a professional working with kids and families, and talk about where's the line between bullying and discipline. So that's what I got on today's episode. I'm gonna get to you guys after the intro. Peace. What's up, y'all? It's Brian with Blerding While Dad. Again, this is me trying to get back into the coming to y'all live with different topics and things related to blurred stuff in the blurred sphere. Sometimes it's comics, sometimes it's movies, and sometimes it's parenting. And this is one of the parenting ones. So if you're interested in that stuff, stay tuned. And if not, then I'll see you on another live stream. But I wanted to get into this because there's a video that I've seen, and I think it's a little bit older. It's making the rounds, but it's not the first video of this nature that I've seen where, and it's a brother, his son is acting up, doing some gangster nonsense on one of these social media platforms, and dad is basically becoming unhinged. When I say unhinged, like yelling, threatening, the whole nine and whatnot. And I know the intent, let me fix that. The intent is to kind of scare the kid into compliance or whatnot. And I get it. I understand how that stuff works. But there's a couple of issues I take with it. I'm not going to show the video because in my mind, it crosses that line into bullying and abuse. Other people ain't gonna see it that way, and I know that we finna argue about that, so that's just what it is. But in my mind, in my viewpoint, in my experience, and we're talking 20 years in the game, working with kids and families, it crosses that line into bullying and abuse, because dad escalates. He's starting to scream out random threats at strangers, and then ends up slapping the kid on camera, and they broadcast it for billions of people to see. Because that's how you solve problems, interpersonal problems. Broadcast it to billions of people. Ask Will Smith and Chris Rock about that. Anyway, and it sparked a conversation, and so I wanted to have this conversation in front of the crew and kind of lay out what my thoughts are as a dad, who's had issues with kids, but it's not, and who's worked with kids that are in the streets or whatnot. And also talking to my two sheltered little ones that I have that we've intentionally kind of sheltered from a lot of this BS, but also, talking to the parents out there and making a couple of pleas to them. So overall, dad's losing this stuff, slaps the kid twice on camera. They decide to broadcast it out to the world. And it raises a couple of interesting questions. One, we ignore the fact that this kid is a teenager. We ignore the fact that this kid has just gotten embarrassed on a very, very, very public platform in front of billions of people. And now we're about to send him out into the world. And he was online acting tough. And the reason why he got in trouble was because he was online acting tough. And now you're about to send him back into that same world that just saw him get slapped in the face and demeaned and embarrassed and threatened by the dad in the picture. And now he's got to go back out into that world. Like people aren't going to clown him. Like he's not. Now he's really in that thing, because we know how stuff gets, how she gets online where somebody does something embarrassing and it just haunts you for the rest of your days. When I was in high school, we had somebody get whooped in the office. Like his mom came up there and whooped him in the office. And he ended up transferring schools, man. They made that brother's life a living hell, bro, at that school. It wasn't pretty. And it was a disproportionate reaction to the behavior. because he's up at school acting a fool. And so mom decided she's going to come up there and whoop him in the office during passing period where everybody and their mom's watching. And this is a mostly black school. He got roasted from the beginning to the end. It was absolutely brutal. Nobody would want to stay in that environment. Everything was a joke about that for the rest of the year. For the rest of the time bro was there, it was jokes. And it set up a very, almost a toxic environment, because not only did he have to deal with mom whooping him in school, now he got to deal with the bullying aspect of the weight of 2,000 plus students falling down on you, making fun of you every time they see you. And I promise you, that was a disproportionate response to the behavior. There ain't nothing that deserves that kind of treatment. And so now you've taken that 2,000, that isolated group of 2,000 people that kind of knew about it, and we can't assume that the whole 2,000 students knew about it. We're just throwing that number out there. But now you're taking that number and multiplying it by a factor of 1 billion. You've publicly humiliated and shamed this child for acting tough online. And now you're putting them in a position where now, kids don't always think in that straight line of, well, if I ignore this, it'll go away. No, I have to go out and prove myself again. And now I'm putting myself in a position where I do something even stupider to establish that I'm not somebody who just got punked out online. That's one. Two, we see a similar or worse behavior in this child. What are you going to do now? You've already assaulted him on camera and embarrassed him, humiliated him in front of the world. What's the next step? How do we address that behavior? What happens when the behavior escalates? What are you going to do now on camera? What are you prepared to do to address that behavior? You've already gone to the top shelf in terms of it's not going to get much worse for this kid in the house and in the streets. So now what? That's my other argument with it. Now you have nothing left. And three, again, I'm not showing the video here. If you want to find it, it's out there on the interwebs. I'm not even going to post the link because it's abuse in my estimation. But now, we've already kind of discussed what do we do next? Like, what's the next behavior? What's the next reaction to what's the next reaction to this kid's inappropriate behavior? What are you going to do? You've already gone to the top shelf. There's nothing there. There's nothing left. You have to escalate the consequence now to match the new behavior. And what are you going to escalate to? How violent does it have to get? And speaking of how violent it has to get in the house, I watched a man lose emotional control over a child's behavior. That's what happened. When I wasn't watching somebody who was in control of their emotions and their reactions. I was watching somebody who's completely out of control. What lessons are we teaching this young man moving forward if dad feels like the appropriate response to a negative behavior is to broadcast it online and slap you in the face and punk you out on on social media so the whole world can see exactly what the hell happened? What lessons is being taught? What cycle of violence is being broken by that? Because now we're teaching this kid that that's the way that you respond to a child acting up, losing your composure. A vastly over emotional response in response to a child's behavior. That's what the lesson that's being driven home. And that's the sad part about this, because I've worked with parents who think that babies are able to process misbehavior. What's misbehavior? And saying that this toddler, this 16-month-old understands what is why this is misbehavior, why this is wrong on one hand. And on the other hand, now we have to correct it. This kid barely has a concept of themselves, but now you're expecting them to understand that what they're doing is wrong and they're doing it just to piss you off. I've seen children get beat behind that kind of stuff. Toddlers get hurt behind that kind of stuff. That's the reality, y'all. And so that's kind of what we're dealing with. You're teaching this young man that when he has kids of his own, that's how he's supposed to react to their behaviors. Other part of it, if it reaches the point where you have to lose your actual emotional intelligence, actual composure to address a behavior, that means that you failed in multiple places along the way to address that behavior. It's escalated, it's gone up, and you haven't addressed it. It's reached that point, and this kid has done something, and you have failed to address it at these other points, and now you feel like the only thing left you can do is come unglued and assault this kid and broadcast it for the whole world to see. And really, it's not for the benefit of the kid. It's for the benefit of the audience that you're showing it to so that they can think, oh, you're a tough on top of it parent. You can say, I don't care what the people think, but you really do if you're posting it online. So that's my part of the rant. Now, I want to kind of scale it back here. And I want to walk through this because we got to talk about parenting styles. And we got to talk about what you're raised with versus what you do with your own kids. Sometimes the stuff that you survived and the ordeals that you've endured you don't need to replicate those for your kids. Those are learning experiences for you to learn how not to behave in that specific way. And just because it worked for you and you survived it doesn't mean that you need to inflict it upon your child. I think that's the line of thinking that we do need to filter out. And it's not just black folks that do this. I've seen white folks do the same thing. I've seen people of all colors and nationalities do the same thing where, well, it worked for me when I was growing up. Okay, that's fine. But now we know better. You know, all these kids are wearing bike helmets. You know, when we were young, we didn't wear any bike helmets. Well, yeah, and then we also known people that have gotten messed up on bikes. I know a lot of people that got ran over by cars and stuff, and you know, or whatever. Maybe their injuries wouldn't have been as severe if they had protective equipment on. There's a reason why bike helmets exist. So just because you survived it doesn't mean that that's the optimal way. And part of moving through time is learning better ways to handle similar situations. Just because your parents did something to you when you misbehave doesn't mean that that's the reaction that you need to have. Nor does it mean that your kids need to experience that. And so I'm saying that to say this. I am fully aware that a lot of people have lived their entire life. They grew up their entire childhood not knowing an act of non-transactional kindness from a parent. There are people out there that have experienced that, where they've never experienced kindness or softness from a parent. And that's not a way to grow up, where your parent never shows you kindness. And sometimes they'll take advantage of you just like the people out on the street will, because they figure in their mind that's the way to teach you how not to trust anybody. And all that does is teach you that you can't trust people that say that they love you, or people whose job it is to take care of you or look out for you. There are people out there that have grown up like that. And so they don't feel like they have the toolbox. And if you've grown up in that world, I urge you to take some time and think about yourself. And I want you to sit down and think, when's the last time have my parents ever apologized to me for something that they've done to me within the same day or a couple of days later, not years later, and it comes out in an emotional outburst because of something else going on? I'm talking about parent realizes they screwed up, they blamed you for something, or you got in trouble for something you didn't do, or they said something mean to you. Have you ever experienced that? apology. Mine was rare, and my mom was really good at a lot of this stuff and not passing on some of the stuff that she might have saw or grown up with or experienced or whatnot. She was fantastic at adapting to what the state of the world was. But I can count on a couple different fingers where I actually got an apology for something. And a lot of kids grew up that way where, especially if you're my age, if you're in that um uh elder millennial baby Gen X group, a lot of us grew up with our parents never apologized or anything. A lot of us grew up as the kids that, you come home and you get off the bus and you're left to your own devices for a long time. You're just left alone. Dinner is on you. You got to figure out what you're going to do. Mom's worked. Mom had 2 jobs plus she was going to get her master's degree. I had to take care of myself from like 5th grade on. And I was fine with it. Am I raising my kids that way? No. That's just not what I prefer to do. There was nothing wrong with it, but it's just something I prefer not to do. But let's take a step back for the parents that did cross that line, where their parents did, you were actively disrespected by your parents on a day-to-day basis. Just because your parents, disrespected you or diminished you or whatnot does not mean that that's appropriate to pass on to your kids, because they're watching you. They learn by watching you. They're going to duplicate what you do they're going to duplicate what they do with their kids with what you're doing, what they're doing with them. And so when you have a video like that, we have a parent that loses emotional control and is actively threatening his son and slapping him in the face and talking about, I'll kill you. You get involved in all this gangster stuff. What do you think the lesson is that's being taught to the son? Is he being taught not to do this? Is he being taught, I need to get better so I don't get caught next time? And when he has his own kid making the same mistakes, because the kid will make the same mistakes you did, what are you conditioning to him? What are you conditioning him to react like? Are you conditioning him to ignore the behavior up until it gets to the breaking point? And now you're terrified and frightening? Because I saw a dad that was scared. That's what I saw, a dad that was in full-blown panic mode because he's like, I got to save him from making the same mistakes I did. And now this is when you react to it. I'm watching the video. The kid gets slapped in the face. The way he reacted to the video, this has happened before, because there was no emotion to it when that kid got slapped in the face. Like, oh, there we go again. So what tools are you equipping this young man when he has to deal with this in the future from his kids? That's what I'm talking about, breaking the cycle. At some point as parents, it's our job to not be our child's first bully. And I know it's hard to distinguish that line between asserting dominance and teaching respect for authority. Sometimes that line is very blurry. I've seen it as a caseworker. I've seen it with kids in my residential program. I've seen kids who, everybody thinks that these kids land in these programs because they're bad or unwilling and not listening and whatnot, and their parents are soft. I can promise you that I've gotten more kids from authoritarian households than anywhere else. Being authoritarian in the house doesn't mean that this kid is going to toe the line. And sometimes it forces them to rebel in extreme ways, and then they end up landing in a residential facility like the ones I used to run. I've seen that authoritarian model, and what that creates are kids that have, and this is just my personal experience. There's probably professionals that can log on and tell me different, but in my personal experience, I've seen when you have that bullying type of authoritarian parenting, where behaviors aren't addressed until it's at the extreme of the behavior. We go to the top shelf for every single consequence, and you're trying to terrorize our kids into behaving. What that creates are kids that don't form the ability to think critically and evaluate situations critically on their own. You need to understand this, because when you have an authoritarian household, you're building a kid that you're basically conditioning this child to never question authority. And understand, they'll fall under the sway of an authority, and sometimes that authority is not another adult. And I got to clarify that with y'all. and that bears repeating. Sometimes when you strip a kid of their ability to make critical decisions and go out and fuck up and do something and get in trouble for it and learn from that screw up, when they're punished brutally for screwing up, you're creating a kid that never questions the authority, and they don't get a chance to question your role as an authority in their household, but also they don't get to question authority outside the household. And a lot of times they'll fall under the sway or influence of another kid who takes the role of an authority figure. And that kid may not have their best interest in mind. And I've seen it happen way too many times. So I understand the fear. Specifically, I understand the fear that we have as Black parents, where there are so many threats out there for our children, and trying to equip them in a world that's not really made for them to enjoy a safe childhood. We abridge Black children's childhood a lot, and I've seen it in a professional capacity. You know, we tell little girls, you're out there, you can't go out there looking fast, and make their behavior responsible for, and make them responsible for the behavior of adults that should know better. We label little girls fast for growing up and being little girls. We abridge Black children's childhood, and it happens within our communities. It happens without our communities. I've seen where, as a caseworker, where one client gets sent to DCYC, gets the Douglas County Youth Center, gets removed from the home pending placement, and the other client gets therapy in the house. Tell me what the difference was. And it wasn't one case. There was multiple cases of it. You tell me what the difference was. Why, similar records, similar involvement, similar behavior, similar crimes. One kid gets therapy, the other kid gets detention, pending placement in the home, or placement outside, pending residential placement. Kid gets removed pending residential placement, while the other kid gets to stay in the home and just get therapy. You tell me what the difference is. And it's the first thing you think of in terms of what the difference is between the two kids. So I've seen how Black childhood is treated. But at the same time, we can't turn into bullies to try to bully and terrify our kids into compliance. Because here's the thing. What happens when your kid really gets in trouble and they really need you? Are they going to come to you? If they can't trust you to respond to their behavior without losing your emotional composure, are they going to come to you? If the last time I messed up, Dad freaked out and broadcast me to billions of people getting slapped in the face and yelled at and threatened, is the dad somebody that this kid trusts to come to when they have a real problem, a real pressing issue? Think about this, y'all. So being your child's first bully, and a lot of times we are, and I think that's the thing that's a hard pill to swallow. A lot of times, getting your kids to toe the line, you end up crossing that line into being your child's first and most undefeatable bully. They can't beat you. They can't win against you. They can't overcome you until they move out. And by then, they have so much scar tissue from growing up that they don't want to interact with you. And then parents legitimately get their feelings hurt when their kids are like, I don't want to interact with you like that. I love you, Mom, but parents will, kids will get to that point, and I've seen it with kids that have grown up where, they grew up with that bullying kind of parent, and they don't want to have anything to do with that parent, nor do they want that parent to have access to their kids. It's a sad thing to see. And a lot of times the parents can't put it together, and they'll say, well, I did my best with what I had. But it's like, but you didn't take inventory of yourself and your own behaviors in terms of the ways that you addressed things with this kid. So that's my short-term live stream, extemporaneous off the top of the dome kind of speech on this. I do think that we do need to have a deeper conversation on that specific video and this trend of humiliating your kids online. Please stop. Chill with that shit, bro. Like, I believe you don't need to prove to me that you're a good parent by embarrassing your kid online and posting it for millions of people to see. You talk about cyberbullying and y'all are worried about the cyberbullying. That's the real cyberbullying right there, y'all. That's where you're opening the door for this kid to get picked on and screwed with because they got embarrassed online. There are plenty of cases of kids that ended up becoming subjects of memes, and it kind of ruined their lives in a degree. Imagine you end up becoming the kid that's mom and dad thought it was great to film them getting disciplined and getting bullied online for millions of people to see. It's not cool. So please stop. Black folks, please stop. White folks, stop. Whoever, stop posting disciplining your kid. Stop public humiliating your kid and thinking that's a valid form of discipline. It is not. Turn off the camera, keep that stuff in house, bro. That's all I got. If you like this live stream or like the content in this live stream, give me a like, leave a comment. If you disagree, I'd love to, I'd love to argue with you in the comments. Well, kind of, for a little bit until I get bored with it. But I'm telling you guys, the line between discipline and bullying your kid is a blurry one. But if you feel like, wow, would I like this to happen to me? And you realize you wouldn't like that feeling, don't do it to your kid. That's the easiest way to gauge it. Would I like this feeling of being humiliated in front of the millions of people? Millions of strangers that are going to hound me for the rest of my life because they're going to see me and I'm become a meme, a viral meme. Don't do it to your kids. That's plain and simple. So that's all I got. Again, leave a comment, leave a like if you like the content of this. I'm going to try to get in here for more little parenting tidbits and more nerd stuff. So we're going to be talking about the Marvel Universe. Hopefully I'll probably get into recast T'Challa and give my thoughts on the entire what's going on with that. I've tried to stay out of it because it's gotten to the point where it's getting kind of silly, but I want to have that conversation and stuff. So that's what I got on this channel. Like, share, and subscribe. Let me know if this content connects with you, and I'll talk to y'all later. Blerding while dad. Talk to y'all later. Peace.